This story was written by a user on Reddit. Enjoy. Digital clock. A large digital clock was mounted to the wall. It counted the seconds as any other clock, although there was no way of knowing if it's correct. You just had to assume that it was. I spent a long time nervously glancing at it. When it hit 12, I would have to make a decision. It was like that every day. Every time it hit 12 a.m. or p.m. I didn't know whether or not it was p.m. or a.m., although that hardly mattered to me anymore. I felt the sweat on my palms. They had warmed the usually cool, solid metal table I was sat by, but only in the spots my hands were in. I would move them now and again to cool them down. This is the most amount of movement I would make in a day. This world is horrible. It's limbo. I died, or at least I thought I did. I don't remember how or why, but I am dead, and this is a place that makes you proof that you are worthy of going to hell or heaven, that I am sure of. I glanced at the large digital clock. The numbers were red. The sharp glow burned into my retinas. But I was used to this. The room was lit up by this all-consuming red presence. The constant changes in the numbers would mess with the lighting in the room, something that really bothered me in the beginning. But now I'm used to it, or at least not bothered by it. The clock said 11:38. It was about time. I looked at the black wall in front of me, waiting for whatever was waiting for me. I could tell by the light in the room it was 11:50 now. Time moves so strangely quickly when there is nothing to do. I hadn't eaten in all the time I had been here, and also sleep was impossible. The room was completely square. The walls were black. The chair I sat on was a cheap metal one of the garden variety. The floor was carpeted. It was quite dusty, but somehow my allergies didn't react to any of that, most likely because of me being dead and all. 11:56. I gave my new ruler a glance again at 11:57. I had decided to make the decision quickly and without much fanfare. That's how I would keep myself sane. The clock turned off, then two spotlights in the darkness in front of me illuminated two figures, a young boy and young girl. Two buttons appeared on the table, a red in front of the girl and a blue in front of the boy. They were completely expressionless, just like me. I pressed the blue button and the boy's head rolled off and his body collapsed. The girl looked at him, then back at me. She screamed. Her eyes were still lifeless. Then the spotlight turned off and the scream disappeared. The darkness had turned back into a wall. I looked at the clock, 374. This number had counted upwards for every decision I had made, but I'm sure it's trying to mess with me, because I recall it telling me I had made over 400 once, but I might just be losing my mind. 002, a quick decision this time. I sat and stared out in the air. I would use the time until it became 11 o'clock to figure out why I was here. I would try to piece together any memories I had, but all I could remember was a loud crashing sound, heat as well. I definitely remember that there was fire. A car crash was the logical conclusion. That is the same thing, I thought, every single day, many times a day. Let's say it's 374, even if I saw the number 400-something one day. 436, I think. That's what it said. I sat there as the hours passed, and all I could think was 436 over and over again. Maybe that was the amount of decisions I had to make in total. Yes, that must be it. I almost jumped up in excitement. I looked at the clock, 9:34. Come on, I thought to myself, trying to hurry up the time. It's funny how slow the time goes as you try to make it move faster. 11 o'clock, I stared at the wall. I was getting nervous again, but somehow I was also a little excited. Perhaps soon it would all be over. The clock turned off. 3 spotlights, a man, a woman, and a girl, the same girl as the prior decision. I had seen a few repeats, it always uneased me uneasy, and how she had screamed had gotten to me a little, but there was no way I would pick a child over adults. The man had to go, I picked the green button. The man's eyes grew wide and was sucked backwards into the darkness. The two others just stared at me with judgment. I had seen it before, but this time the light stayed on a little longer than usual. 375. 007. I leaned back and smiled a little to myself. Soon it would be all over. The room, this darkness. Anything was better than this. I'd choose hell over this every day. The dark walls were eating at me, and the red clock was constantly taunting me. I closed my eyes and waited for the next decision. I knew 11 hours had passed, so I opened my eyes. Indeed, it was 11:07. I stared at the wall. I was excited. I was jumping with my leg in anticipation. The clock turned off. 2 spotlights, an old man and the girl again. The girl was a little closer than the old man. I quickly pressed the old man's button. It was purple. I wanted the moment to pass quickly. As the old man grasped at his chest and slowly collapsed and laid on the floor, heaving for air, the girl stared at him. After a long time, he finally let out his final breath. The girl turned to me. She reached out her arm and I stood up, wondering what she would do. Then the spotlight disappeared and the clock turned on again. 376. 0022. My heart was beating so hard, I exhaled and sat back down. I wanted to get this over with quickly. The next decision came faster than I had wanted. I began to fear the thought of seeing that girl again. Her dark brown eyes and her almost golden brown hair. It made me fearful and also a little angry. The clock turned off again. 4 spotlights. This time, no girl. I exhaled and hastily pressed a random button. I didn't pay attention to how the person died. I just leaned back and could relax a little. 377003. The next many decisions went by smoothly. Soon I had made so many decisions that the number said 433. I was smiling now. It was almost over. I was sure of it. The clock turned off and 2 men stood in front of me. Their hair was nicely done up and they were well dressed. They stood with their hands behind their backs. And even if their stares were blank, they almost seemed dignified. Perhaps it was just their posture. A turquoise and cyan button was placed in front of me. As I was about to press the turquoise button, he looked at me. Then he got down on his knees and put his hands together in a motion as if he was begging. He was begging me, but his eyes were completely emotionless as he did so, although it did seem as though tears were rolling down his cheeks. I could just sweat, though. It creeped me out, so I pressed the button. His eyes became sentient. He threw up blood as his guts began falling out of his stomach. The other man just stood by. He watched as the man tried desperately to put his guts back in his body. Then he collapsed. The other man just looked at me and shook his head. 4340016. I slowly released the iron-tight grip I had on the chair. My knuckles would probably have gone completely white, but it was hard to tell under the red light. It was over soon, I whispered to myself. The clock turned off. 2 spotlights. I didn't look up. A cyan and red button was in front of me. My eyes widened. The spotlights were close to me. The girl and the man from before. I stood up, taking a few steps back. They were right in front of the table. I tried to regain my composure, but it wasn't possible. I shook all over my body. "You have to decide," the girl said. I fell over backwards. I had never been spoken to before, not once in this room. I crawled slowly up to the table and tried to build the courage to look at the 2 of them. As I did, I was scared for nothing. They both stared blindly at nothing. I pressed the cyan button with a shaky hand. The spotlights disappeared. I didn't get to see him die. Somehow, this was way worse than anything I had experienced before. 4350010. Soon now, I was shaking out of fear, out of anticipation, out of so many things. My head was so full of all kinds of terrible things. What would happen when I made my next decision? The walls were so black I couldn't even tell if there were walls there at all. The clock turned off, but nothing happened. I sat in complete darkness. What was this? Normally, the transition was almost instant. I took my hands off the table, then the spotlight turned on right over the table. I jumped back as the chair landed softly on the carpet. The girl was laying on the table. Her stare was as blank as ever. She held the red button on her stomach. It was the final decision. I knew it. I slowly walked up to the table. I was scared, but I needed to leave too badly. I wanted this place to disappear forever. I shakily reached out for the red button as I tried not to stare at the little girl. I pressed it. Her head rolled off her shoulders and down on the floor. Blood gushed out of her body and covered the carpet. I screamed so loudly I didn't hear what was being said. I jumped back and leaned up against the wall. When I relaxed a little, I heard it. It was low. Daddy. My eyes grew wide. Why hadn't the body disappeared? It was supposed to be over. I slowly inched along the wall until I could see her little head. Why, Daddy? Why did you kill all those people? Whoa. You killed all 436. All of them. Were the walls really that dark? Were they so dark that you had to kill all those people? I stared at the little talking head on the floor. All you had to do was nothing, so why did you kill all those people? And why did you bring me on that flight as well? I don't know. Why did you destroy me and all those people? Is it really that dark in here? Yes. It's okay, I forgive you, but the rest won't. The families, I mean. You are the only one that survived. You are in hospital right now, in a coma. It's about time to wake up. You have a lot to explain. I sat up in my bed. The tubes stung as they were pulled out of my body. The room was dark. I looked to my right. A digital clock with bright red numbers slowly clicked over to 0025.